Well, now that I've hopefully persuaded you to analyze these cases deductively and inductively, now I'd like to persuade you that we should also analyze them as political scientists. I'm a political scientist. I was trained in political science. I teach my law courses to undergraduates in a government and law department. And what I tell my students is once you've done all of that legal analysis, then what you need to do is take off your pre-law hat and take off your pre-law lenses and put on your political science hat and put on your political science lenses. Because we are not dealing with just one justice. We are not dealing with just one judge on the Court of Appeals. We are dealing with 9 justices. It is a group of decision makers, all of them having the same vote power. They all have one vote. And so we need to understand what is motivating each of the justices in a majority of an opinion on the Supreme Court. And when we are looking at a single case, we need to understand that it is in a particular term of the court. It is in a particular spot within that term. The court is deciding other cases in other areas at a similar time. There are people on that court who have been there a long period of time. There are people on that court who might be on the verge of leaving. There are people on that court who have been there only maybe 10 years or 8 or 5 years. And there are people who are relatively new. There are people who have similar political ideologies. There are people who have similar views about whether or not they're going to respect precedent or not. There are people who have similar views about how much power they want to use as a judge or how much power they don't want other people to use. We have to have a way to analyze this. And so what I tell my students is when you look at a case, the most important thing you start with is what year is it? If you know the year that the case is being decided, then you know the names of the 9 justices on the court in that year who are deciding that case. Once you have that, what you need to focus on is, on that court at that time, how do the wings of the court break down? And I tell my students we need to look at the court as having a conservative wing, as having a liberal or progressive wing, and then there will be people who are in the median or middle of the court who are a little less conservative and a little less progressive, and they would be the possible tipping point justices, the median justice, or what some people call the swing justice on the court, though the justices don't like that term. I try to tell my students that understanding the Supreme Court and decision-making in cases is simple math. What does it take to get to 5 votes? William Brennan used to like to go down the halls of the Supreme Court building. He would see one of his clerks. He would wave his 5 fingers in the air and he would say, 5 votes. If I have that, I can do anything around here. And so I try to get my students, when they know that they are analyzing a case, to look at who are the justices on the court at that time, to look at how have these justices decided these kinds of cases in the past, to look at how there are varying allied wings on the court, and to try to calculate who's in the middle, and try to understand what will that middle justice do. And if they know that, and if they can predict what that middle justice will do, they might have a pretty good idea of understanding in advance what the court should do. But as a professor, I have the luxury of picking and choosing the cases I want my students to read. And so we're always reading cases where the justice in the middle doesn't do what you expect them to do. And that's the lesson for the day. Let's understand why Justice O'Connor is doing this today, or why Justice Kennedy is doing this today. Let's understand why Justice Powell isn't doing what he used to do in the past and is now doing something new. If I can get folks to really focus in on the people in the middle of the court in that case area and to try to analyze what those wings will look like in the future because of those decisions, then I've really begun to teach my students to have really almost bifocals, both their legal lens and their political science lens, and to be wearing two kinds of hat at the same time. And then I think they have a better chance of fully understanding what the case is saying.